Megatronous Prime, the Fallen, origin explored. If the very first Transformers had been Primus's followers, the Fallen is his betrayer. He was Megatronous at the birth of time, one of a fraternity of tremendously strong creatures committed to the welfare of their planet. The Fallen, on the other hand, earned his present designation by going against his fellow Primes and his mission in order to fulfill his own goals, earning him the title the very first Decepticon on the way. His terrifying appearance is a metal prison for primeval, raging chaotic powers giving him the look of a living inferno. These cauldron-like forces emptied him of any remaining empathy and morals, leaving only wrath and rage. The Fallen is extremely strong. He is a master of mystic and entropic arts, and at full strength, he is able to unmake creation with his focused will. He is seldom defeated. At best, he is confined, where he patiently awaits the opportunity to unleash his deadly powers once more. When he is at his most powerful, the Fallen has the ability to open space gateways and travel between realms and universes at will. The Fallen, like his siblings, was formerly a multiversal singularity, which meant that he had 0 alternate universe lookalikes in the enormous multiverse, but that is no longer the case. In various alternate universes, he is the creator of the evil Decepticons, the impetus that drove Megatron to seek power for oneself rather than the collective good. While the exact facts of his background are beyond mortal comprehension, one thing is always consistent. He is awful, horrible news. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Revenge is mine.
Origin of Megatronous Prime. Megatronous Prime was among the first 7 primes that roamed the cosmos in search of worlds where they might construct solar harvesters. These gigantic robots were awakened by a relic that was called the Matrix of Leadership, which creates energon, the essential fuel of Transformers, by killing suns. Solar harvesters weren't to be created in systems that contained life, according to the dynasty of primes. Megatronous elected to disobey this law, claiming that Cybertronians were actually the supreme race and destined to control the universe, and came on planet Earth in 17,000 BC, wherein he began building a new solar harvester. Megatronous gathered an army of Cybertronians who were in agreement with him, known as Decepticons, to aid him. The Decepticons created the Harvester in ancient Egypt, distinguishing themselves with a sign modeled on Megatronous' terrible visage, and murdered any mortals who discovered it. When the other primes learned of his betrayal, they launched a violent attack on the Decepticon forces, and while they were not able to kill Megatronous, they were successful in capturing and detaining him away on Cybertron, before closing the Matrix inside a tomb made of their very own bodies, having to sacrifice themselves to ensure the safety of Earth and humanity. As a consequence, Megatronous, now known as the Fallen, became the very first Decepticon and the actual creator and commander of the Decepticons, and all succeeding Decepticons will wear an emblem resembling the Fallen's visage. The Allspark is actually an ancient and enormously powerful Cybertronian relic. It has the ability to breathe new life into dead technology by transforming it into intelligent, autonomous Cyberanians. It is claimed to have generated the initial 13 primes because it is the actual essence or spark of the civilization's deity, Primus himself. It is unclear where the Allspark originated, while some stories claim that it was formed by a mystery force for an unknown cause. The Allspark was in charge of creating Cybertron and all of the Transformers that lived on it. It originally formed the dynasty of primes, and as per various Revenge of the Fallen adaptations, the Matrix of Leadership, as well as Transformer laborers to serve them. So when the Cybertronian war between both the Decepticons and the Autobots over control of the Allspark began generations later, Optimus Prime sent the cube into outer space in a last-ditch bid to keep it away from Decepticon hands. Megatron, on the other hand, pursued the Allspark, which finally crashed on Earth approximately 10,000 BC in what would eventually come to be known as the Colorado River.
You all know there's only one way to end this war. We must destroy the cube.
The Fallen claims that he and his siblings were the first Allspark creations. The world that would eventually become Cybertron was mainly desolate, but as the Allspark progressively created Cybertron around them, bestowing strength beyond measure on the Fallen and his brethren, the cube's original power was exhausted. They discovered that his energy could be recharged by extracting the energy of the stars, but despite their extraordinary ability to move between dimensions via triangle sarcophagi, they weren't able to locate more stars to fit their goals. As he investigated, the Fallen started to think that the mysterious Allspark was communicating with him, telling him of a greater destiny than his brothers, and selecting him as the chosen one. To help the dynasty of Primes on their mission, the Allspark produced a race of laborers with their own special talent, the capacity to morph their bodies into various shapes. Some, known as Seekers, could transform into interplanetary ships that could seek stars for their civilization, the energy of which would subsequently be gathered by gigantic machines created by the other workers to power the Allspark. The dynasty's quest was moderated by the rule of avoiding stars with populated worlds. However, the Fallen thought that the dynasty's empathy would eventually consign the Cybertronians to destruction. The Fallen began to imagine wicked thoughts as he looked for a solution to this predicament. What if there weren't any other Primes with whom to share the Allspark? What if the power was all his? The Fallen began courting Transformers for his cause. He chose a limited number of Constructicon drones to perform his bidding in private, eventually in service of overthrowing the dynasty of Primes in support of his own purpose. He dubbed this faction the Decepticons. Jetfire, who was the Fallen's most valued and talented seeker, began unknowingly harvesting the stars of populated star systems. The both of them would scan a system jointly, but the Fallen would claim that his search regions were empty of life. This tactic landed Jetfire and the Fallen in problems with the rest of the Primes, so the Fallen started to sow seeds of distrust in Jetfire. He said that the Primes' unwillingness to surrender life to rescue their own world would be their undoing, and that a militia would be needed in the event that the Primes abandoned them all. The Fallen tried to make a star harvester by himself using a fake matrix of leadership that he had created. It was, however, unstable, and the subsequent explosion endowed the Fallen with a strength he had never known before. From within, he was suddenly filled with evil, unthinkable abilities. The Fallen journeyed from world to world, murdering dozens of species and acquiring their technology while leaving the dried husks of the world in his wake, feeling a deeper sense of duty that complemented his darker powers. He grew, and during his rise, he prepared for his impending confrontation with his brothers. When Jetfire enlisted himself with the Decepticons, the Fallen transported them to the planet Earth, where they constructed a star harvester to seize the sun. It did, however, contain living organisms. The Fallen was constructing the harvester over there to either entice his brethren into action while he was poised to murder them all, or to stay in limbo. He won in either case. Jetfire ultimately betrayed his commander just as the rest of the Primes arrived and fell into the trap of the traitor. The Fallen transported Jetfire and the rest of his underlings away, leaving him to face his brothers all alone. The war between the Fallen and the rest of the Primes was expensive. They had not expected the Fallen to possess such strength, and one at a time they succumbed to his horrible grasp. He had extended his consciousness, absorbed the intellectual mass of a swarm intellect 70 trillion strong, examined the brain operation of animals that swim in unprocessed thinking. He had grown so much more since their previous meeting. The Fallen managed to obtain weaponry from his stockpile via personal temporal portals. He assassinated his brothers one by one until only one Prime was left to confront him. The final Prime escaped with one last frantic bet, and the Fallen and he shifted from place to place. The Fallen mistook this Prime for a mere staller, but he was terribly incorrect. The The last Prime had gathered the corpses of his defeated brethren, and when the Fallen was weakened from over-teleportation, he utilized their collective life force to permanently expel the Fallen. The Fallen was ejected from his sarcophagus and sent to another world, where he fell upon a lonely landscape and vowed vengeance. This knowledge was lost over time, and the dynasty of Primes turned into a little more than a legend. However, a few thousand years later, the Fallen's tomb was discovered on present-day Cybertron and transported to the chambers of their planet's military commander, Megatron. Sensing the rage and hatred, the Fallen made contact with Megatron, instilling in him a renewed determination to kill those who sought the Allspark. Following Megatron's vicious struggle against a gang of extraterrestrials seeking the Allspark, the Fallen advised him to grab control of Cybertron to prepare the ground for the Fallen's arrival. He also informed him that Optimus was looking for the Allspark for his own self, and Megatron quickly concluded that Optimus as well as his supporters deserved to be murdered for this crime. Taking the planet alone, though, would be insufficient. The Fallen also instructed Megatron to construct a spaceship in order to locate the Matrix, which he stated was the need for his return. As the spacecraft was being built, the Fallen informed Megatron about his background and his intentions for the Harvester on planet Earth. The Fallen directed Megatron to load his sarcophagus into the ship before remaining behind to battle Optimus's armies and protect the Allspark. The ship was manned by Soundwave and the bulk of the Decepticon warriors. Meanwhile, on Cybertron, a civil war raged between Megatron's Decepticons and Optimus's Autobots, leading to the launch of the Allspark into space.
Master, my brothers could not stop me from this.
To Soundwave's surprise, the Nemesis discovered the Allspark's Energon signature. The Fallen began talking to Soundwave just when a spacecraft collided with the Nemesis and vanished via a portal. After landing the spacecraft on a lifeless planet, Soundwave was ordered to chase the spacecraft via the portal it left behind, which the Fallen identified as a space bridge. Megatron later discovered the abandoned Nemesis while on the hunt for the Allspark. He conferred with the Fallen once again, who was outraged that Megatron had made this detour. He told him to begin the pursuit right away. Sure that now the cube would lead them towards the Harvester, Megatron obeyed, abandoning the sarcophagus amid the ruins. Soundwave reappeared many thousands of years after having salvaged the space bridge column from the Autobot spacecraft. Soundwave was notified of Megatron's arrival by the Fallen, and Soundwave determined Megatron was a member of the Cybertronians believed to be held hostage by humans, spurring him to return. The Fallen then utilized the space bridge column to bend space and time, finally escaping his captivity. The Fallen established contact with Starscream soon after Megatron's demise in Mission City and used him to build a Decepticon legion and lay the basis for his resurrection. He sent Starscream and his men to Cybertron to await further instructions and vowed that if Matrix was discovered, Earth would be destroyed. Regrettably for the Fallen, the two Autobot siblings Mudflap and Skids discovered that Starscream was working with the Fallen, while not understanding who and what the Fallen actually was, and traveled to Earth to alert Optimus Prime. The Fallen instructed Soundwave to call one of his last seekers in the world, Ransack, and send him to handle both the twins. He harshly warned Starscream to not fail again, but due to his confinement, the Fallen could only interact with his generals rather than Ransack himself, which prompted Soundwave to take his own course of action and continue to work on his own perspective to try and look for the Tomb of Primes, including recruiting the twins rather than trying to eliminate them. The twins proved to be feigning their defection in a perfect act of celestial irony, and they put a conclusion to Soundwave's dangerous plan. Ransack meant to alert the Fallen, but apparently never did, while Mudflap and Skids decided that given all the trouble they'd been into since arriving on Earth, they'd best not tell anybody about the Fallen stuff they had learned about after all. The fourth issue of the Tales of the Fallen comics goes into more detail about the Fallen's origins. Long ago, the person who was to turn into the Fallen started to sense the Allspark talk to him. It crowned him as its chosen one, gave him an army of weaker Transformers, and then sent him off to gather sons for harvest, all while prohibiting him from informing his fellow Primes about it, reminding him that one fine day he would have to stand alone. When the Primes gathered, they decided that while Cybertron's expansion required more power than they had, and they had to harvest even more suns, they had to be prudent and avoid taking suns that were sustaining other life forms. The not yet fallen snarled that, as Primus' children and servers of the divine Allspark, it was obviously their holy right to freely take the energy necessitated by the Allspark. One Prime, on the other hand, insisted on taking a pledge not to hurt other life forms. Obviously, the Almost Fallen disregarded this and grabbed the very first system Jetfire discovered. Jetfire accepted responsibility for the devastation, and it was determined that in the future, a complete assembly of the dynasty would convene well before the Star Harvester is utilized. The soon-to-be Fallen too ignored this and went out to find his own world and an inhabited one and build his own harvester, thinking that the others were worthless and he would demonstrate his dedication to the Allspark. Tragically, the Matrix he'd created for this purpose failed miserably. He was engulfed by primordial flames and resurfaced as a blazing crazy figure who accused the dynasty of bringing him to this state and promised they would pay. When the dynasty realized what he'd done, they expelled him and pronounced him fallen. The Fallen made an act of remorse and feigned to accept their judgment before tearing his way through the galaxy, devastating inhabited worlds, assimilating whatever breakthroughs in technology and ways of battle he encountered, and eventually believing himself to be greater than the Allspark. Once he was ready and armed, he phoned the Earth Dynasty and told them he'd discovered an empty world and they needed to come back down to take its sun, planning to massacre them and steal the Matrix when they came. They may face him or remain in limbo, but he always wins. Jetfire attempted to halt him and was expelled, but the dynasty came in force. While they begged him to justify himself, the Fallen took 2 of the firearms he'd gathered on his journeys and began slaughtering his brethren. Only one remained alive, the Prime who had requested the pledge, and he began fleeing across the world in successive teleportation bursts. The Fallen followed, unaware that the Prime had been accumulating the sum total of the dynasty's life essence during the leaps, and after the Fallen had exhausted his resources, he exiled the beast into his coffin.
Revenge is mine.
The Fallen vowed to exact vengeance. The 2009 Transformers film gives us another glimpse into the true wicked nature of the Fallen. A few thousand years before, the Fallen brought his brethren Primes to Earth in an effort to harvest the sun it orbited. The Fallen found a primitive species of hunters just as they had finished building the Star Harvester. The Primes claimed their law of the sacredness of life and declined to trigger the Harvester. However, the Fallen hated mankind as lowly insects and sought to trigger the Harvester. The Fallen was destroyed in a fierce battle, and his 6 brother Primes gave their own lives to bury and hide the Matrix of leadership using their corpses. And even the Fallen's Harvester was hidden many years ago inside a pyramid in what was later known as Egypt. The Fallen sent the Seekers to find the Matrix, however, they were unable to accomplish so, and he finally abandoned them. The Fallen was regarded as the original and first Decepticon, and he was the commander of Megatron, the faction's commander. He used Megatron to track down the Allspark. The Allspark was shattered and converted to 2 tiny shards during the incidents of Transformers in 2007 and Megatron's fall at Mission City. Following Megatron's resurrection, he journeyed to the Nemesis, which landed on Saturn's frigid frozen moon, where the Fallen remained in a life support machine as Starscream oversaw the formation of a new Decepticon army. Prostrating himself in front of the Fallen, Megatron stated that he had disappointed his lord and their people by causing the Allspark to be obliterated. The Fallen, amused by his disciples' ignorance, disclosed that the cube was only a receptacle and that the knowledge and power contained inside the Allspark had instead been implanted with the consciousness of the human who had confronted Megatron, Sam Witwicky. With Sam's information, they could track down the Star Harvester as well as the Matrix required to activate it. Megatron requested permission to redeem himself, but the Fallen advised him to be patient. Although he could see his yearning, the Fallen himself yearned to return to the horrible world where his brethren, the Primes, had forsaken him. The Fallen also stated that the only danger to him was Optimus Prime, the sole living Prime. Because Optimus would defend Sam, the Fallen sent Megatron to kidnap him and bring out the Prime. Megatron's objective was only half successful. While Sam fled, Optimus arrived to protect him and was killed in the process. The Fallen detected his death and rejoiced, knowing that the moment had come to strike. When the Decepticons re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, the Fallen joined them, wrecking an aircraft carrier and invading many cities. The Fallen calmly intoned as the aircraft fell into the ocean that vengeance was finally his. The Fallen used Earth's communication network to broadcast the existence of the Transformers on global television, demanding that the human hive turn Sam in or be destroyed.
Unless you turn over this boy.
Unfortunately, Sam was in Egypt looking for the Matrix of Leadership upon hearing that it may help restore Optimus Prime. He was successful, but the Fallen appeared by teleporting amid the several Nest forces, teleporting again, dispersing the soldiers, trapping Optimus, and snatching the Matrix. He then traveled to the now exposed Harvester, and as he entered the Matrix inside the device, stated that his brethren had lost, as he now possessed the sun. The humans aimed to eliminate the Harvester using their advanced artillery as it charged. Unimpressed with their performance, the Fallen revealed his immense strength by employing telekinesis to obliterate the attacking armed troops. Later, he erected a debris barrier to thwart an airstrike. Optimus Prime, now united with Jetfire, battled the Fallen and demolished the Harvester, throwing them and Megatron crashing to the land below. Enraged, the Fallen ordered Optimus to follow his brothers in death, to which Optimus replied that they were also his brothers, and the two fought in a violent duel, but it soon became clear that Optimus was powerful enough to confront the Fallen. Megatron fought Optimus in a bid to help his lord, but was swiftly defeated and knocked unconscious. The Fallen went on an offensive on Optimus, ripping off Prime's left missile thruster and striking him in the head with it. Optimus ultimately succeeded in impaling the Fallen through his arm by using his own shock spear, and demanded his face, dragging the spear back, tearing apart the Fallen's face, displaying his skull, and causing him to yell in agony and wrath. He tried to flee, but Optimus Prime ran up behind him, smashed through his chest, and yanked out his spark center with his bare fingers before crushing it. Prime then stood aside as the Fallen slumped to the floor, energon pouring from his mouth, killing the Fallen. The Autobots, along with their allies, hailed victory when a wounded and scared Megatron escaped with Starscream. It is unclear what became of the Fallen's body after he died. The Fallen's family consisted of his 13 Prime siblings as well as his 6 brothers, also known as the Dynasty of Primes. His friends were Starscream, Megatron, and the other Decepticons, and his main enemies were Primus and Optimus Prime.
Yes. At long last, Megatronous stands.
Amazing Megatronous Prime story from the animated universe. Megatronous was one of the 13 formed by Primus to combat and defeat Unicron, and he was successful. Megatronous, on the other hand, finally deserted the rest of the Primes and assassinated Solus Prime. Megatronous was expelled out of the world and banished to an alternate realm as punishment for his actions. Yet, he retained the ability to converse with the entities in the Prime's dimension. Megatronous, enraged and humiliated, blamed Cybertron and Earth for his loss, vowing to return to the cosmos and destroy both worlds. Megatronous, who had just a minor degree of influence from beyond the cosmos, was known as the very first Decepticon. Megatron had given himself the moniker Megatronous before reducing it and making the name shorter. Megatronous forced the Alchemer to wreck while passing over Earth, freeing the Decepticons. After some time, Megatronous approached Steeljaw and negotiated a deal with him to build a ground bridge link to rescue Megatronous from his captivity in return for granting Steeljaw and his crew access to Earth. Steeljaw grudgingly agreed to the terms of the agreement. Megatronous, agitated, phoned Steeljaw once more in order to check on the portal's development. Steeljaw told Megatronous that he required additional Decepticons to assist him with the mission, but Megatronous remained unimpressed. Megatronous used his telekinetic abilities to make Clamdown tug on his left arm forcefully until Steeljaw surrendered. Megatronous told his newfound servant that the gadget would require a significant quantity of metal to harness the energies released by his arrival, namely Colossus, the Crown City. Megatronous appeared in Steeljaw's vision over the Crown City Colossus. He notified Steeljaw that he had gotten impatient and promised that if he was locked in his world any longer, he would make all of them pay. Although the Autobots, led by a regenerated Optimus Prime, sought to intervene, all their efforts were unable to prevent Steeljaw from opening the gateway. Megatronous triumphantly stood before them. Megatronous advanced to attack the depleted Autobots, but was stopped by Optimus Prime. Megatronous intercepted an Optimus blast that would have hit Drift and Bumblebee instead, and then used his telekinesis to fling Optimus to the ground. He held his adversary to the dirt and informed him that Cybertron and Earth both had a hand in his banishment. But he also intends to kill Optimus as the very first to succumb to his power, as he turns his dominant hand into something like a drill and assaults Prime with it. Megatronous threw Grimlock at Drift when he halted the drill. Jetstorm and Slipstream emerged to shield Drift and the rest of them from Megatronous, allowing Optimus to stand up and fight him. During the battle, Optimus disclosed that he had gotten more strength from the rest of the Primes, to which Megatronous answered that he had gained extra power from a force that was even greater power. Megatronous got the upper hand and slashed at Optimus, pushing him inside the water and knocking him away from the fight for the time being. Windblade managed to escape from her chains and fired at Megatronous, who quickly defeated her. Megatronous congratulated Steeljaw and all of his Decepticons for recovering and activating his fallen spark fuser, explaining to Steeljaw how he meant to extract the anti-spark remains of Unicorn from inside the Earth's core and combine it into the Allspark, destroying both Cybertron and Earth. When Steeljaw learned this, he tried to attack Megatronous but was stopped by Megatronus' telekinesis. Megatronous flung Steeljaw aside, claiming that he had not technically lied to him about his right to control Earth or whatever remained of it. Steeljaw continued to assault Megatronous in a frenzy, but after a short battle, Megatronous used his telekinesis to hold the enraged Steeljaw and send him hurtling in the sky far away.
I'm very sorry for your loss.
Steeljaw's involvement diverted Megatronous just long enough for the loyal Bumblebee to revive Optimus, after which the two Autobot leaders rushed in to finish Megatronous. While Optimus battled Megatronous once again, Strongarm, Bumblebee, and Sideswipe utilized their Decepticon weapons to power themselves up and then blasted Megatronous, but this did not stop him, since Windblade indicated that it will take more than just a single blast to kill Megatronous. Megatronous was able to get the Allspark below to Earth, while Bumblebee was enraged, fighting Megatronous. Optimus managed to smash Megatronus' spark fuser, sealing the gap, returning the sparks to their proper places and thwarting Megatronus' goal. Enraged Megatronus redoubled his onslaught and directed his bullets squarely towards Optimus, killing everyone in sight. Grimlock interfered again, this time with Strongarm and Bumblebee supporting Optimus just as he was ready to kill him off. Sideswipe entered the fight after assisting Drift and Windblade in dropping a portion of the arm of a statue on top of Megatronus. Optimus had shattered Megatronus' sword, and Grimlock had crushed the first Decepticon with his tail as the arm of the statue approached. Megatronus hoisted the statue, causing Bumblebee's squad to attack Megatronus with a prolonged surge of energy, dissolving his body and presumably killing Megatronus on the spot. Bumblebee was unclear if he had been destroyed when he requested Fixit to identify Megatronus' energy signature, but Fixit stated that there wasn't anything to detect. Optimus also told Bumblebee that they would be there in order to stop Megatronus even if he did survive. What makes Megatronus Prime so powerful? The Fallen possesses the ability to manipulate items such as automobiles, artifacts such as remnants of the pyramid or matter, as well as the capability of telekinesis. The Fallen possesses semi-immortality, which means he doesn't age, but is still vulnerable to wounds. The Fallen also has the power to increase his resistance to all types of injury, dramatically increasing his durability and turning it regenerative. While engaged in some intense conflict, the Fallen could greatly increase his strength. In one instance, he rips a jet engine off Optimus Prime and tosses it at him. The Fallen has the ability to manipulate objects such as the remnants of a pyramid, which he utilized to induce jet planes to crash into or fly away in order to avert an air attack on the Star Harvester inside the pyramid, himself and his disciple, who is Megatron. The Fallen is able to teleport, and when he lands, he creates a powerful shockwave that stuns everyone in the area. When the Fallen saw Optimus was preparing to attack him, he sprang to Optimus in order to avoid flying towards the Sun Harvester. The Fallen could nearly see and anticipate the enemy's strikes thanks to his skill. The Fallen's combat empowerment skills make him extraordinarily quick at evading, avoiding assaults, and striking. He rapidly avoids several of Optimus's punches and pulls off his jetpack while simultaneously violently attacking him. He is also extremely brilliant and increasingly smart. This skill allows the Fallen to outperform his brothers when it comes to teamwork. The Fallen possesses elemental energy control and can influence anything. The Fallen has the ability to know when an opponent will strike him and can rapidly dodge the attacks, thus immunizing the Fallen nearly fully and demonstrating his superhuman reflexes.
In moments we'll be at firing strength.
Conclusion: Megatronous was once devoted to his creator Primus. Nonetheless, the other 13 saw him as unreliable and unstable. Megatronous quickly turned into the first Decepticon after he turned pernicious, cruel, vicious, immoral, and wicked to the rest of the Primes, even becoming a murderer for slaughtering Solus Prime. He appears to harbor resentment towards both Cybertron and Earth for their participation in their banishment, which has left him with a strong desire for revenge throughout his exile. He also appears to have the same amount of rage as Megatron, since he nearly murdered Optimus Prime and the Autobots for foiling his intentions to destroy Cybertron and Earth. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.
Millennia, I have dreamed of my return to that wretched planet where I too